All right, YouTube. Rumor has it that Trump is a little bit pissed off at Paul Ryan. I'm not sure exactly why, since he can always just sort of use Paul Ryan as his whipping boy of sorts, but may try to actually purge him from the leadership of the Republican-controlled House. Probably a good idea. Paul Ryan was just sort of rigged in there because, Boehner leaves and Paul Ryan's like, oh, now we can get something accomplished. And he doesn't get anything accomplished. He's exactly the same as Boehner, only maybe even a little bit less intellectual, honestly. I like to think that Boehner at least tried to do the right thing. He was totally hampered. He was hampered by the Democrats. He was hampered by most of his own party. What the hell was he supposed to do? He was basically, for the first time in a long time, we had somebody leading that legislative body whose own party primarily wouldn't even work with him. So it was continuous problems. But Paul Ryan's been the same. He takes over for Boehner. Boehner gets tired of that crap and leaves. Paul Ryan takes over, sort of Mitt Romney runner-up. And it just doesn't work out. He's overseeing right now a problem within the Republican Party. The same thing that is saving the Republican Party is a very bitter pill for the old guard, for the neocons to swallow. What they need is somebody in that role as Speaker of the House who's not a neocon. They need to get one of the new right Republicans, someone like I think Rand's in the Senate, so he can't do it, obviously. But there are others, some Freedom Caucus member or something like that, who would have to take the reins. The neocons are dying out. The Republican Party successfully began undergoing this sort of paradigm shift years ago. It actually starts back before 2012. It starts with the Tea Party stuff. That takes hold. It goes on through the rise of the young Ron Paul Republicans, and then the rise of the Trump and Rand Paul fan sort of Republicans. If you combine their two support bases together for the primaries, for example, when they were both peaking at the same time, about 45% of the Republican Party, it seems, was receptive to that general message, and that number is quickly growing. The new Republicans potentially being added before the next election by Generation Z, I can't imagine that they're going to relapse into neoconservatism. I think that boat has already sailed, and so what you've got as a problem is that a lot of Republicans are unwilling to work with the McCains and the Grahams and the Paul Ryans of the party because they represent sort of that old corporate money style of Republican. They represent sort of the 80s and 90s Republicans. The Democrats, meanwhile, have a totally different problem. They've managed to get everyone to march in lockstep, but in so doing, they've actually held back the progress of their own platform into the modern era. That's why they lost the last election, mainly. So we've got the tale of two parties here. One party has problems with being in power because it hasn't fully made that transformation, but it's already taking steps to transform itself. Bodes very well for being elected, not so well for actually governing once you get elected. On the other side, we have a party that is unlikely to actually gain power because they never underwent that transformation, but in their position is capable of being stable and more or less homogenous. What the Republican Party needs to do, what Trump needs to do, is ally with the new right sort of Republicans, with the Rands of the party, with the Amashas of the party, and so forth. Maybe even reach an olive branch out to more of the sane, like the Jim Webb Democrats, to continue being able to govern in the wake of having to do this, to prevent the possibility of impeachment. The Republicans rise up against their own president or something, and try to get Mike Pence in there or something to kick him out and get someone else in. He needs to stave that off. And he needs to urge the Republican Party to continue the transformation that's already begun. Because the old guard neoconservatives can't win elections anymore. They couldn't even win the primary. They lost out against what is somewhat rightly cast as a reality TV star, which shows you how weak they were. This is why Hillary Clinton needed the DNC to cheat for her, to pull out all the stops to get her nominated against a socialist. They resisted that shift in public discourse on the left towards social progressivism, actual socialism, as opposed to neoliberalism, which is basically another flavor of the neocons. The neoconservatives have lost power too. At no time during the primaries did neoconservatives regarding their various candidates who would be neocons. At no time did they have a majority of support. They had a minority of it. Trump has a significant majority of the support within the Republican sort of partisan base. And that base is going, his mere presence there is going to cause that to grow. He'll wage war on the legislature before he'll actually think about working with people who want him to do things that he knows long term are just going to fail and tarnish his reputation and denigrate his fan base. A lot of these people who voted for Trump aren't really partisan Republicans anyway. Some of them, they tend to lean towards conservatism, but they couldn't be a partisan Republican because the Republicans weren't really offering them anything different from the Democrats. What did W ever offer them that was different from what the Democrats were offering at the time? Nothing. Not one friggin' thing. What did all of the other mainline candidates in the primaries this time around? What did they offer people? What did Jeb Bush offer to anybody? Oh yeah, I'm a Bush. Oh, vote for me. Here, turtles. Something like that. The campaign style doesn't work anymore. They don't seem to realize that people use social media now. They don't really use, AM radio quite so much to get their information. And Trump realized that, and some of the others realized that. Now everybody else is trying to stand in his way, and Paul Ryan is public enemy number one among their number. He does need to be kicked out. Trump needs to try to get him replaced with somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, if we look at the neocons, none of them do. It doesn't matter which one specifically is chosen, even if it's a person who did end up endorsing Trump as opposed to like some never Trump figure or something. They're still not going to really work with him because they're still not going to be able to heal that fracture within the party. You have to wait a couple more cycles probably till 2020 or maybe beyond for the paradigm shift to conclude, to be fully done. At which point the neoconservatives will be like the evangelicals of this generation, a small and dying remnant of that party's legislative body. The neoconservatives, as a total, as the number of Republican seats that they hold in the House and Senate, will decline and become a very small group of people. It'll be the old guard, big business, multinational Republicans. A few of them will linger on for, another generation or two. Most of them will be out on their ass within a couple of cycles. Now, the same is true of the Democrats. Increasingly, the neoliberals, while they can outraise and outspend their opponents 10 times over, are going to start losing. The DNC is not going to be able to stop that from happening. They're going to have to make do with a party in which grassroots politicking and social media activism take supremacy over corporate donations at some point. When that happens, it poses a big problem for them. But not so big a problem because the Republicans are already overhauling in that direction. You've still got a lot of big money people in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, on both sides. Most of the people there are still neocons and neoliberals, but that number will begin to decline. They're going to more closely reflect the better aspects of perhaps the progressive movement of the left and then sort of the Trump populists on the right. And you'll see, you may see the rise of a few third-party candidates actually getting into the legislature as well, which could be key votes if it's close. You've got basically a split Senate with a Green Party member or a Libertarian. Somebody's going to have to wine and dine them to get their way. That'll be funny, certainly to see. Actually, it might get to the point where the neoliberals and neoconservatives essentially are conjoined at the hip in order to suppress both sides that are trying to rise up in their place. That would cause even more havoc. They haven't started doing that yet, at least on paper. Behind the scenes, yes. The same corporations, they fund the neocons and neoliberals. The same people that were funding Hillary Clinton also funded like Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney and people like that. People noticed that. That was a problem. But how long can that money really last out against public discourse? It's not entirely clear. That's about all. Peace out.